Nitya Dharma, or our eternal nature, by Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Nārāyaņa Gosvāmī Mahārāja. The story of Indra and Virochana. The Sanskrit words Nitya Dharma, or inherent spiritual function or eternal occupation, automatically and unavoidably presuppose that there is a performer of that eternal function. This is due to the inseparable connection between religion and the practitioner of religion. The example is given of the inseparable relationship between water and liquidity, or between fire and warmth. Before considering the inborn religion or inherent occupational function or dharma of an entity, it is essential to first reflect on the fundamental truth of that entity. Thus, first we consider the truth regarding I. The Chandogya Upanishad narrates the history of Indra and Virochana, by which this fundamental principle of the soul can easily be understood. Millions of years ago, at the beginning of the Golden Age or Satyuga, the entire universe was divided into two camps, the demigods and the demons. The head of the demon party was King Virochana, and the leader of the demigods was Lord Indra. They rivaled for the attainment of the unparalleled happiness and enjoyment. Thus, bearing envy and spite toward each other, they approached the father of the universe, Lord Brahma, and asked him how they could fulfill their desires. Lord Brahma said, "One can easily attain the enjoyment available in all the worlds and can satisfy one's every desire when one knows the soul. The soul is free from sin, old age, death, lamentation, hunger, and desire, and his every endeavor and resolve is truthful and just." With the aim of realizing the soul, both Indra and Virochana resided with Brahma and practiced celibacy for 32 years. They then prayed to Lord Brahma to tell them about the soul. Lord Brahma said, "That person or self you are now seeing with your eyes is the soul, and he is fearless and immortal." They inquired further, "Is the soul that person or self seen in water or in a mirror?" Lord Brahma told them to look into separate clay pots filled with water and then asked them, "What do you see?" Upon seeing their reflections in water, they said, "O Lord, we see the whole soul just as it is, from the hair on his head down to his toenails." Lord Brahma then asked them to cut their nails and hair, clean themselves and decorate themselves with ornaments. He again requested them to look into the clay pots. "Now what do you see?" We see that the two persons in these reflections have also been cleaned and decorated in a very beautiful clothes and ornaments, just as we have, and thus they resemble us perfectly. Lord Brahma said, "This is the soul, and he is fearless and immortal." Hearing this, Indra and Virochana departed with satisfied hearts. Upon reaching the abode of the demons, Virochana, who now understood the body to be the soul and the object of worship and service, declared, "O demons, he who worships his body as the soul attains this world as well as the upper planets. All his desires are fulfilled and he attains full enjoyment." Indra, however, deliberated upon Lord Brahma's words on his journey home. This body takes birth, dies, undergoes transformations, and is subject to disease and so forth. How then can this be the immortal soul, who is without birth, death, grief, and fear? Although halfway home, Indra now returned to Lord Brahma and expressed his doubt to him. Lord Brahma had Indra live in celibacy for another 32 years and then said to him, "That person who is understood to be I within a dream is the soul, and he is fearless and immortal." Hearing this, Indra left with a peaceful heart, but upon his journey home he again began to reflect. When someone is awake, his body may be blind. yet in a dream his body will not be blind. Someone's body may be diseased, yet in a dream that person may remain free from disease. But suppose that within a dream the person identified with as the self is beaten or killed. He still fears and cries, but upon awakening that self ceases to exist. Thus, the form seen in a dream cannot in fact be the soul. Thinking like this, Indra returned to Lord Brahma. After having him practice celibacy for another 32 years, Lord Brahma instructed him as follows. The soul lies in the state of deep sleep, which is devoid of any capacity to perceive or even to experience dreaming. But, as before, Indra began to contemplate Lord Brahma's words on his way home. In the condition of deep sleep, he thought, there is no understanding of who one is, nor is anyone else being perceived. This condition is therefore a type of annihilation. Thinking in this way, Indra returned to Lord Brahma once again. This time, after 5 years of celibacy, Lord Brahma instructed him anew. Indra, the physical body which is naturally subject to death is only the abode of the soul. The soul is connected to the body, just as a horse or bull remains harnessed to a cart. In reality, it is the person who has desires such as I shall look, who is the soul. For this task there are senses like the eyes. He who desires I shall speak is the soul, and for the act of speaking there is the tongue. He who wills I shall hear is the soul, and for the act of hearing there are ears. He who desires to think is the soul, and the mind carries out that act of thinking. From this history, it is clear that the soul has 3 abodes, just as a peanut has 3 elements, the shell, the skin, and the nut itself. The soul's abodes are the gross body, consisting of 5 mundane elements, air, fire, earth, water, and ether. The subtle body, mind, intelligence, and false ego, which possesses a semblance of consciousness. And third, the pure body of the soul. This pure spiritual body is composed of the 3 spiritual potencies, Sat, Chit, Ananda, namely, pure eternal existence, that is Sat, full cognizance, that is Chit, and complete spiritual bliss, that is Ananda. Each of these bodies has its own separate function or dharma. Both the gross and the subtle bodies are impermanent, and thus their respective functions are also temporary. The soul, however, is eternal and everlasting. This is the established doctrine in India's ancient scriptures, the Vedas, Vedantas, Upanishads, and Puranas. Therefore, the function of the soul is indeed its eternal function or everlasting religion. It is also called Vedic Dharma or Bhagavad Dharma. The soul's true and acquired natures. The Sanskrit word dharma should be understood in this connection. It is formed from the root syllable dri, which is synonymous with dharan, meaning to retain or to possess. Dharma thus means that which is retained, or in other words, the nature associated with an entity. The nature or quality that a being permanently retains is that being's eternal nature. When, by the desire of the Lord, any entity is created, then that entity's true nature is concomitantly created. This nature or quality indeed is the entity's eternal nature or nitya dharma. Later, either incidentally or because of a connection with another object, if any transformation or distortion takes place in that entity, then that entity's eternal nature also becomes transformed or distorted. This distorted or converted nature gradually becomes steady, and it appears to be eternal like his original nature. Yet, this converted nature is not that entity's actual nature. This nature is called Nisarga, his acquired nature, and it is temporary. This acquired nature takes prominence over a person's true nature and begins to assert its own identity as the real nature. Water is a substance whose inherent nature is fluidity, but under certain circumstances, water solidifies into ice. At that time, its nature, fluidity, also transforms and becomes hardness. Here, this quality of hardness has become the distorted nature of the water, and it now acts in place of water's true nature of fluidity. This distorted nature, however, is never permanent, but has come about by some cause or force. Consequently, when this cause is removed, then acquired nature is also automatically removed, and the true nature manifests once more, just as ice melts and again becomes liquid when placed near heat. The nature of infinitesimal soul. To properly understand this subject of true and acquired nature in relation to the soul, it is essential to understand the fundamental truth of the soul and its eternal nature. By this knowledge, one can very easily understand the eternal and temporary function of a living entity. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, the Creator, Maintainer, and Annihilator of the universe, the origin of all, the primeval Lord and the cause of all causes, is the undifferentiated, absolute truth. He is not just formless or devoid of features. This is only his partial manifestation. In reality, he possesses a transcendental personal form. He is the inconceivable possessor of all power, and he is endowed with 6 opulences, all beauty, all fame, all wealth, all strength, all knowledge, and all renunciation. By the influence of his inconceivable potency, which makes the impossible possible, the Supreme Absolute Entity, Lord Krishna, manifests in 4 aspects. As his original personal form, as his personal splendor, including his abode and his eternal associates, expansions and incarnations, as the individual spirit souls, as the material energy. To help us understand this, these 4 aspects can be compared to, respectively, the interior of the sun planet, the surface of the sun globe, the atomic particles within the sun's rays, and the remote reflection of the sun. Srila Jiva Gosvāmī states that if we compare Krishna, the complete conscious entity, to the sun, then the individual spirit souls may be compared to the localized particles of light in the sun's rays. The rays of the sun are not independent of the sun planet, nor can a ray alone be the sun. Rather, it is a part of the sun. In the same way, the infinitesimal spiritual conscious souls, who are compared to the atomic particles of light in the rays of the sun, cannot be independent from God, as they are part of Him. Nor can one's soul be addressed as God, but rather as an infinitesimal part and parcel of Him. The description of the individual soul's eternal identity is found in Bhagavad Gita. The eternal individual souls in the material world are certainly my separated parts and parcels. Verse 15.7. It is also found in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 2.1.20. Innumerable souls emanate from the Supreme Being, just as tiny sparks emanate from a fire. The Shvetashvatar Upanishad 5.9 states, one should know that the soul is the size of 1,000th of the tip of a hair. It is also found in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela 20, 108 and 109. The living entity is the marginal energy of the Lord, and a manifestation simultaneously one with and different from the Lord, like a molecular particle of sunshine or fire. God is the possessor of all potencies. These quotes confirm that the soul is a separated part, the result of the transformation of his marginal potency. The Shvetashvatar Upanishad 6.8 states, A single supreme potency of God manifests as numerous potencies, of which there are prominent the internal potency or Chit Shakti, which manifests his transcendental pastimes; the marginal potency or Tatastha Shakti, which manifests unlimited infinitesimal souls; and third, the external potency or Bahiranga Shakti or Maya Shakti, which manifests the illusory and temporary material universes. By the Lord's desire, the marginal potency of God, which is situated between the internal spiritual potency and the external material potency, manifests innumerable, insignificant, atomic conscious souls. These souls are spiritual by nature and are capable of wandering throughout the spiritual or material worlds. For this reason, this potency is known as marginal potency, and the souls manifesting from this potency possess a marginal nature. The relationship between God and the living entity. There is an aphorism from Vedanta Sutra that says, Krishna or God and his potency are non-different from each other. Therefore, Krishna and the transformation of his potency, the living entities, are also non-different from each other. But this oneness is only from the perspective of their being equal as spiritually conscious beings. Krishna is the complete conscious being and the master of Maya or the deluding material energy. The living entities, however, are atomically conscious. Although pure, because of their marginal nature, the living entities are capable of becoming subject to Maya. Krishna is the possessor of all power and the living entities are devoid of power. Thus, there is an eternal difference between God and the living entities. This difference and non-difference is beyond the scope of human intelligence and therefore, from the philosophical perspective, is known as the doctrine of inconceivable difference and non-difference. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the original personality of Godhead, took the contextual doctrines of the Vedas by the previous Vaishnava preceptors such as Sri Ramanujacharya, Sri Madhvacharya, Sri Vishnu Svāmī and Sri Nimbadityacharya, and by completely harmonizing them, he revealed their synthesis, the doctrine of inconceivable difference and non-difference, which is the universal, absolute understanding of the Vedas. God is the source of all expansions, and the living entities are his separated parts and parcels. God is the attractor, and the living entities are the attracted. Krishna is the object of service, and the living entities are the performers of that loving service. Loving devotional service to the completely conscious being, Shri Krishna, is the real nature or dharma of the atomic conscious living entities. This service is indeed the religion of the unalloyed love for God, and thus is the eternal nature or nitya dharma of all living entities. The constitutional nature of the living entity is to be an eternal servant of Krishna. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela 20:108. But if that living entity, whose nature is marginal and who is atomically conscious, becomes adverse to the service of God, then God's deluding material potency or Maya covers that living entity's pure atomic conscious nature with the subtle and gross material bodies. This Maya thus causes these living entities to habitually wander throughout the 8,400,000 species of life. When the souls are reinstated in their service to God, they are released from their bodies imposed by the deluding material potency. As long as the soul fails in his inclination to serve God, he will continue to be scorched by the threefold miseries. These are caused by our own mind and body, or other living entities, or the material nature and demigods. At this time, the living entity's pure spiritual form is covered by the curtains of material illusion, and his eternal nature is also transformed or becomes perverted. This perverted nature is the living entity's occasional function, just as water becomes solid when transformed into ice. This casual occupation or temporary religion of the living entity manifests in many ways according to the time, place, and recipient. Divisions of religion. All the varieties of dharma or occupational religious duty prevalent in this world can generally be divided into three categories. 1. Impermanent religion, which does not accept the existence of Lord and the eternality of the soul. 2. Circumstantial religion, which accepts the eternality of the Lord and the living entities, but also prescribes temporary means to attain the Lord's mercy. And 3. Eternal religion or Nitya Dharma, in which one endeavors to serve God by the means of pure love and devotion. Eternal religion, although known differently according to country, race, or language, is one, and it is the sole supreme absolute function of every living entity. The religion prevalent as Vaishnava Dharma alone is the eternal and highest ideal of supreme religion. In the performance of circumstantial religious duties, there is no direct spiritual cultivation or execution of eternal religion. Rather, it aims at it indirectly. Thus, it has partial utility only. And those processes that comprise impermanent religiosity are devoid of the eternal occupation of the soul and are even likened to the function of animals. They are fit to be rejected. Human beings are equal to animals in the matter of eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. Yet, the quality of being religious is unique to human beings. Without spiritual life, humans are no better than animals. Hitopadesha 25. That religion in which the nature of the self or the soul is not cultivated, in which endeavors are made to increase eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and in which enhancing one's enjoyment of temporary sense objects is supported as the ultimate objective of human life, is like the occupational function of animals. By this, it is in fact completely impossible to fulfill the goal of human life, which is to escape all sorrow and attain pure happiness. Therefore, in 11.3.18 of Srimad-Bhagavatam, it has been stated, all men in this world are inclined to perform material activities for the purpose of becoming liberated from sorrow and attaining happiness. But the opposite results are seen. In other words, neither sorrow is dispelled nor is happiness attained. For this reason, the Srimad-Bhagavatam 11.9.29 gives the highest instruction for all people of the world. After wandering throughout 84 lakh species of life, one with great fortune achieves the rare human form of life, which, although temporary, affords one the opportunity to attain the highest perfection. It is for this reason that a sober person does not waste a single moment and constantly strives for the ultimate welfare of life, as long as his body, which must inevitably face death, has not fallen down and died. Some persons accept reward-seeking activities or karma to be the means to attain ultimate auspiciousness. Others accept jnana or knowledge of the impersonal aspect of God, while others accept meditation or yoga. The value of these goals, however, is refuted in Srimad-Bhagavatam 1.5.12. Even spotless knowledge of Brahma, the impersonal aspect of Godhead, in the form of freedom from the karma and its reaction, has no beauty if it is devoid of devotion to the personal aspect of God. How then can fruitive and selfless action, if not offered to Bhagwan, be praiseworthy, since they are troublesome in the stages of both practice and perfection? Srimad-Bhagavatam 11.14.20 further states, O Uddhava, meditation, study of the Vedas, austerity, and giving in charity cannot overpower me, as does intense devotion, that is bhakti, performed solely for me. The meaning of this verse is that pure devotion to God is the only means by which one can attain his ultimate benefit. This instruction is also given in the revealed scriptures. It is devotion or bhakti that reveals God to the living entities. The Supreme Person is controlled by this devotion only. Therefore, bhakti or pure transcendental devotion is superior to all other practices. This alone is the eternal religion of the soul. In Srimad-Bhagavatam 11:14-21, Krishna, the Supreme Lord, also says, I can be attained by pure devotion or bhakti alone. The nature and signs of pure devotion. What is the form of pure love and devotion? The Shandilya Sutra states, pure devotion is supreme attachment to or love for the Lord. Moreover, it has the propensity to control the Supreme Controller, and its nature is immortal. Śrila Gosvāmī describes the intrinsic nature of pure devotion or bhakti as follows. Pure devotional service is the cultivation of activities that are meant exclusively for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna. In other words, it is the uninterrupted flow of service to God performed through all endeavors of body, mind, and speech, and through the expression of various spiritual sentiments. It is not covered by knowledge of the impersonal aspect of God to attain liberation, reward-seeking activity, meditation, or austerities, and it is completely free from all desires other than the aspiration to bring happiness and welfare to the Supreme Lord. Sri Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu 1:1-11. Devotion has two stages. First, the stage of practice or sadhan bhakti, and the second, the stage of perfection or prema bhakti. Eternally perfect love of God is called prema bhakti, and it is the living entity's only eternal religion or constitutional occupation. This pure love of God, although eternally perfect, remains in the covered state in those living entities who have fallen into materialism. When someone in this covered state attempts to uncover this love for God by practicing devotion with his senses, it is called sadhan bhakti. This practice of devotion is also eternal religion, but in its immature state. Whereas in the stage of perfection, loving devotion or prema is the fully matured and ripened state of the eternal religion. Thus, although eternal religion is one, it has two stages. The practice of devotion is also of two types, regulated devotion or vaidhi and spontaneous devotion or raga nuga. Until a spontaneous attachment and taste for God, Sri Krishna, appears in the heart of a practitioner, he follows the regulations and rules prescribed in the revealed scriptures as obligatory activities. In this way, by observing the discipline and regulations of the Vedic scriptures, the living entity engages in devotion to God. Such practice of devotion is known as regulated devotion. By contrast, one is engaged in spontaneous devotional practice when a spontaneous attachment and taste arise in the heart for Sri Krishna. When, without regard for the rules and regulations of the scriptures, one becomes intensely eager to possess the moods of the eternal associates of the Lord in Vraja, the topmost spiritual planet, who are full of love and attachment for Him, and when one performs devotional practices to follow in the footsteps of those eternal associates. The glories of chanting the holy name, Sankirtana. Generally, there are 64 limbs of devotional practice. After taking shelter of the lotus feet of a bona fide spiritual master, the prominent limbs of devotion are 1. Hearing the glories of the Lord. 2. Chanting His names. 3rd. Remembering the names, qualities, forms, attributes, character and pastimes of the Lord. 4th. Serving His lotus feet. 5th. Worshipping Him. 6th. Offering prayers. 7th. Rendering Him service. 8th. Making friendship with Him. And 9th. Completely offering Him one's very self. Of these 9, hearing the glories of the Lord, chanting His names and remembering His names, qualities, forms, attributes, etc. are superior to the others. And of these 3, chanting His pure transcendental names is supreme. All the limbs of devotion are fully included in the chanting of the names of God. According to the fundamental philosophical truths, God and God's names are non-different from each other. The glories of the transcendental name of God are found in profusion throughout all the sacred Vedic texts. Especially in the age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the chanting of the holy names of God is the sole religion or refuge. The Brihadaranyaka Puran states, in Kali Yuga, the dark age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is chanting the holy names of the Lord. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way. Srimad-Bhagavatam 6.3.22 also states that chanting of the names of God is the sole, supreme religion of the living beings. Devotional service beginning with the chanting of the holy name of the Lord is the ultimate religious principle for the living entity in human society. The development of Bhakti or devotion. The sequential progression of the cultivation of eternal religion as revealed by Srila Gosvāmī is surely unparalleled and most wonderful in this world. First, faith or Shraddha. In the beginning, faith and devotion will arise within a very fortunate person due to his accumulation of transcendental, pious activities over many previous lifetimes. This faith is the seed of the creeper of devotion. Second, thereafter comes association with saintly personalities or Sadhu Sanga, and most importantly, the association of a self-realized spiritual master whose heart brims with pure devotion to the Lord and who is therefore transcendently situated. The spiritual master will give the student the powerful Mahamantra or names of the God. Third, spiritual practice or bhajan kriya. Under the guidance of self-realized and empowered saints, one performs the practices of devotional service such as hearing, chanting and remembering the names, form, qualities, attributes and pastimes of the Lord. Fourth, destruction of all unwanted desires and the misgivings of the heart, or anartha nivritti. As a result of performing devotional practices, the impurities in the heart that prevent advancement on the path of devotion are destroyed. Fifth, firm faith in spiritual practices or nishtha. One consequently attains firm faith and constant stability in the practices of devotion. Sixth, transcendental relish or ruchi. After this, a transcendental taste for devotional practices is attained. When this real spiritual taste awakens, one's attraction for spiritual practices such as hearing, chanting, meditating and other spiritual activities exceed the taste one may have in any type of material activity. Seventh, deep attachment or asakti. This refers to a profound and direct attachment to the process of worship, but more specifically to the Lord, the object of one's practice. Number 8. Eventually, one attains bhava, the sprout of pure love for God. This is compared to a ray of prema, the sun of pure transcendental love for God. In this stage of devotion, the essence of the internal potency of the Lord, which consists of pure cognizance and spiritual bliss, is transmitted to the heart of the practitioner from the heart of one of the Supreme Lord's eternal associates. Therefore, one realizes the transcendental emotions of one's eternal spiritual body. Number 9. Pure love for God or prema. When the fully matured state of spiritual emotion called bhava becomes condensed, it is called prema, pure transcendental love for God. This prema alone is the eternal religion or occupation of the living entities. This is also the teaching of the Supreme Lord Himself, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It is the most confidential, established subject matter within all Vedic scriptures, that is Veda, Vedanta, Upanishads and Puranas. True religion and cheating religions. In the world today, the majority of religions are, in the words of Srimad-Bhagavatam, cheating religions. In Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, it is stated, according to Srimad-Bhagavatam, all worldly ideas that go by the name of religion on this earth are nothing more than the complete deception. Temporary religion is that religion in which prayer for bread and butter is the highest form of worship of the Lord, in which, due to selfish interests, the fundamental principle is to change one's affiliation from that of a Hindu to that of a Muslim, a Buddhist, a Christian, and a Hindu once again, and in which one attempts to rid oneself of bodily diseases, considering his body to be his soul or self, and the living entity to be the Lord. Feeding the poor rice and dal with the misconception that such persons are God in a state of poverty. Constructing hospitals and godless educational centers, believing this to be the topmost service to God. Thinking that the eternal occupation of the soul, temporary religious duties, and all other varieties of religion are one, neglecting the eternal occupation of the soul, and propagating secularism, sacrificing harmless animals and birds in the name of love for the world and service to humanity and the nation, are all temporary religions. None of these activities ever brings permanent welfare to the world. However, if we consider eternal religion to be like a temple, in other words, to be our highest objective, we may accept these other religions or dharmas partially as steps to reach this temple of eternal religion. Wherever these other religions contradict, cover or dominate the eternal occupation of the soul or Nitya Dharma, this should be completely abandoned. Morality, humanity, or worldly love that is devoid of the eternal function of the soul is meaningless and unworthy of any glorification. The real objective and only purpose of humanity and morality is to attain pure love for God. If there is just one true performer of this eternal function of the soul who keeps the fire of the chanting of the holy names of God ablaze, then his nation, race, and society can never be ruined, even after that nation is oppressed and kept dependent by another country and has had its treasures looted, its scriptures burned to ashes, and its culture, art, and prosperity destroyed. This chanting of the names of God, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, makes possible the eternal welfare of the world and of one's country, society, class, and self. I complete my lecture by repeating the final instruction of Lord Krishna, the founder of Dharma, in Bhagavad Gita 18:66. Completely abandoning all bodily and mental dharma, fully surrendered to me alone, I shall liberate you from all reactions to your sins. Do not grieve.